Our objective for today is to understand how populations change over time. It's important to remember that a population is a group of interacting species. You can see below the group of zebras interacting together. What is a population and how do we measure it? Remember, the population, by definition, is a group of organisms that belong to the same species living in the same habitat at the same time. So to calculate a growth rate, we would take the amount of births that happen in that population and subtract from that the amount of deaths. In addition, we also have to take into account immigration and emigration. Immigration with an I tells you that things are moving into an area. Emigration with an E tells you things that are exiting or leaving the area. The way I remember is I into, E exit. So if you look, we have two things that come into a population, births and people moving in. So here's our population. Then we have to subtract from it the things that are dying and the people that are leaving. How are populations distributed? So we have population density, which tells us how many individuals are in that specific area. They can be clumped together in groups, kind of how you are sitting right now. They can be uniform, so they're spread evenly. There's equal amount of space between each individual. Or it can be random, which just means they're randomly placed all over throughout that ecosystem. So if you think about it in respect to you, in the classroom, you're clumped together in groups. When you line up, single file line in kindergarten, say, then you are uniform, you are spread evenly. And then hall break here, everybody is just randomly moving throughout. How do populations grow? We have several types of growth. The first is exponential growth. If you see, we also call this J-shaped growth because it creates a J. So this just tells you that the population increases very, very quickly, only after very few generations. Does that mean something will grow forever? No. We do not grow exponentially and just keep on going. We will reach our limit. However, there are some things like microorganisms or bacteria that if they are given enough nutrients and they have enough space, they can essentially grow forever. Another type of growth is logistic growth. It exhibits an S-shaped curve. So if you can look here, you should be able to see the shape of an S. So it starts off as exponential, creating your J-shaped curve, and then these limiting factors come in, like space and water and food. And so that starts to level the population off until it fluctuates around this certain number. And we call that certain number a carrying capacity. That is essentially the maximum number of individuals that that environment can support. So when we start to run out of space, we start to run out of food, we start to run out of water, those limiting factors cause our population to decline. When we're under our carrying capacity, we have enough water, enough food, enough space. So people start reproducing and we rise back up. Eventually we'll go over and we'll run out again and go back down. It's important to remember that as resources become less available, the growth of the population slows or stops. Limiting factors, whether they're abiotic or biotic, prevent most populations from just growing indefinitely. So what factors limit that population growth? These can be any things like space, individuals that they can mate with to reproduce, food, so competition, where they're competing for the same resources, only one person's going to win. Predation, meaning we have a predator who seeks prey. Prey is what they are eating. And then relationships that we will get into later, parasitism, mutualism, commensalism, those types of symbiosis, as well as disease. Those things are considered biotic factors. Usually disease is caused by a living microorganism. Competition, we have two living things that are fighting. Predation, something is eating something else. Whereas natural disasters and unusual weather, like a tornado, an earthquake, a flood, those sorts of things are abiotic. So it'll be important to distinguish between living and non-living limiting factors. Again, these factors will determine the carrying capacity, or that imaginary number that the population fluctuates around. Other things, such as environmental changes, like a drought, could cause a population to be limited. That would be an abiotic characteristic. Other species, whether it's a predator, a prey, or a competitor, but if there's another species that moves into the area. If you look below, you can see a lynx and a snowshoe hare. The black line represents the snowshoe hare, and the red line represents the lynx. So if you can tell, they fluctuate. When one is high, the other is low. When the other goes high, so the snowshoe hare, the lynx population is low, lower than the other population. So when the lynx population is high, look directly below. The snowshoe hare population is lower than the lynx population. So as one goes up, the other population goes down. If the predator population is high, the prey population will be lower. How is our population growing? If you look at the information on the graph, you can tell that the Earth is about 5 billion years old, and human beings have been on this population for about 2 million years. The population for humans has been up into the billions in the last 200 years. So do you think we are meeting our carrying capacity, or our population going to dip back down? Well, let's look into why our population just exploded. There are three factors: fertility, or the ability to have babies; infant mortality, infants living longer; and longevity. Our lifespan has extended. So we have also allowed animal domestication and agriculture to create a whole new world. We have come up with crops that can withstand drought. We have come up with crops that can withstand certain bacteria. So those things are allowing our crops to grow, which is then providing food in tough times, what would normally be tough times for our animals. We also had the Industrial Revolution that you are discussing in history, where our cities just grew rapidly. They gained water, they gained energy, they gained transportation. That then increased the productivity in those cities. So it bettered our nutrition, our sanitation, and of course, medicine has just grown exponentially. How are we affecting the environment? We have limited resources. We have land, food, and water that we all need. We have changed agriculture over the years. We have changed the industries. We are no longer just one plant that is producing or packaging hamburger. We have several different ones across the country. We have found there are renewable and non-renewable resources out in our environment. We have started deserting areas and taking down trees so we can build shopping malls or new housing divisions. We've been polluting the water. We have increased biological magnification with our insecticides. We're polluting the air as we drive down the street in the car. Acid rain from our cars. We are separating habitats, what is called habitat fragmentation. We're taking the habitat and cutting it into different fragments. We are also introducing different species. If you are familiar with the lake, you are probably familiar with zebra mussels. You're supposed to check your boat, make sure that when you take your boat out of the water, you aren't taking some zebra mussels with you. Zebra mussels are an invasive species that take away resources from our natural species. And we will look into our ecological footprint and how much we impact the environment, each of us as an individual. There's a cool quiz online. Any questions so far?